Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the It's All Possible podcast, the great leadership podcast where we discuss all things possible and try and turn them into probability. I'm very excited today to have back one of our earlier guests from 2020, and so much has happened since I spoke to him last time. Would you please make welcome Mr. Peter Thurin. How are you, Peter?
And that's the greatest testimonial you can ever receive, Rob, is when you get invited back somewhere. So I feel very humbled and very flattered, mate. Always love our chats.
Well, really great to have you back, Peter. I was talking to Finn, who's our producer here, and we were talking about great people we spoke to in 2020 and who we'd love to have back on the program. We made a few calls and none of them were available, so thanks for coming. We really appreciate it.
You got a new script writer. That's fantastic. No, I love you. Got some funny stuff. No, that's obviously supplied to you by Finn. Thank you, Finn.
Yeah, that's it. So that's you got him in there, mate. So look, no, in all seriousness, Peter, it was a great chat last time. So much has happened between the last time we spoke and now, and I'm really keen to catch up. You and I have spoken a couple of times offline about the changes, both in our lives, but also seeing our clients as well. And I thought we've got to catch up again. Hey, but one thing I wanted to talk about was, we called the It's All Possible podcast. So what does the word possibility mean to you?
Well, my immediate response is it makes me smile. It just puts a smile on my face, because when I think possibility, I think, I'm an optimist by nature, I think, but I'm going to begin back to front a little bit, because I'm going to quote a gentleman who I know is very dear to your heart, and it was one of my boyhood sporting idols. So this is in reverse. And I think you know where I'm probably going with this. The great man himself, Muhammad Ali, who said that impossible is just a big word thrown around by small men who find it easier to live in the world they've been given than to explore the power they have to change it. Impossible is not a fact, it's an opinion. And that's the part I love, because somebody dumps it on you doesn't make it so. It doesn't make it real. And so when I talk about possibility, and I think, as an optimist, I kind of play with that word optimism. And one of the things that I've done during this period of time was I wrote a book called The A to Z of Easy to Do. And the O was for optimism. And I'd love to share with you a quote that, I looked at all sorts of quotes, but the one that resonated so strongly with me, and it brings the word possibility into it at the same time, not in the quote, but certainly in the context, that optimism, and this is from a gentleman called Noam Chomsky, optimism is a strategy for making a better future. Because unless you believe that the future can be better, you are unlikely to step up and take responsibility for making it so. And I think that's critical here, Rob. I think that it's about, sitting in honesty corner, having a look at where we're at right now, but having an inherent belief that things can and will get better, that the possibilities are there for us to explore, but that you need to take responsibility for making it so. And that's integral.
Yeah, I really like that, Peter, and I'd be a big fan of both those gentlemen you quoted. And as I said, you can't be a leader unless you're an optimist. And I always thought that was a really interesting view on things, and I totally believe that. It's the same reason someone says, you can't be a leader and a whinger, because no one follows a whinger, right? And you can't lead unless you can lead people with possibility and lead them with optimism. And it's not blind optimism, and we're not blind possibility. But what we're talking about is that strategy of believing, having that belief that there is something better out there, that you can be responsible for it, and that you can actually turn possibility into probability, because through taking action.
No, I love that, because the whole notion around taking responsibility, we know that certain things have been dumped on us, decisions have been made on our behalf that we may not agree with right now. And I can stay focused on the woe is me, or I can really focus on the things that I can control and that I need to take responsibility to bring to life. And I think it's a really important mindset to have.
Yeah, for sure. And when we spoke in April 2020, and I was looking back, and we were really at the start of things, weren't we, Peter? We were, you and I both from Melbourne in Victoria, and we're now the most locked down city in the world. I think we've become world champions in that. And you and I are highly aspirational, being world class. So once again, you and I have gone to the front, mate. And so with the good help of some politicians along the way. What do you? Just reflecting back on where we were in April 2020 and where we are now. How do you think think people have gone, and what's worked and what hasn't worked from your perspective? I'll just throw it open to you.
Yeah, well, that's a huge question. But first and foremost, what's been really interesting is that when people say to you, "Oh, you wouldn't understand," I have genuine empathy, both personally and professionally. As you've rightfully said, we live in the most locked down city in the world. Quite outrageous. And we could dwell on that and get angry and frustrated, but neither of those things serve you well. And that's why we need to really look at how we can move forward and how we can not only be inspired by some of the things that are going on around us, but also be a source of inspiration to other people. But when I talk about empathy, I think it's really, really important because for me, when we go on stage today, which is a virtual stage in most cases, we bring genuine credibility because we understand what it's like to be locked down. We understand the frustration and the anger and the impact, the negative impact it can have on other people. So for me, the empathy comes around through, well, personally, I've got my daughter, for example, is homeschooling a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 2-year-old while trying to build a business. It's just not possible. And, I'm cheering for her and doing anything and everything I can possibly do. My oldest son lives in Sydney. He became a dad for the first time in his life. I want to hug my boy, hug my daughter-in-law. And I'd love to meet my new granddaughter. I've gone months already now, and I have genuine empathy for people. Professionally, our diaries, I'm speaking on behalf of both of us, in the short term anyway, went from full to nothing overnight. I had national and international speaking engagements, and I was pretty excited about the next 12 months. I'd already started rebranding and moving away from my previous business, which was called Black Belt in Excellence. And now Peter Thurin and the whole philosophy of easy to do, easy not to do was being brought to life, and bang, it was just smashed overnight, and it went to nothing. So, that's daunting. So, when you think about what was back in April 2020, I don't think you and I had the remotest notion of what it was going to look like in 12 months' time. So it was, the question that you're asking me is really, what's been working for people and what's not working for people. It's such a broad question, isn't it? Because a lot of the impact on people has been arbitrary. Some people were just blessed that they had an online presence, that it just went from strength to strength to strength. I've got a friend of mine who I was helping. He almost went bankrupt, and I was helping him through it pre-COVID. And then COVID, because of the industry he's in around homewares, etc., his business has gone through the roof. Now, he's no genius. He just happened to be in the right industry. So,
right spot, the right time, and the right industry. Yeah.
And it's all very well to tell people, the word that I really don't like is pivot. What does that mean? Turn in a circle. But you do need to adapt. And not everybody has been able to do that. I mean, I'll ask you a question. I've got this beautiful, genuine human being that has been growing a limo service. He drives a car, he's been feeding his family by driving. Well, tell me, how many times have you been to the airport? How many times have you been to a conference? So, through no fault of his own, he's a genuine, hardworking individual that has had his business smashed. And people say, well, he's got to take hold of opportunity, and he's got to get online, and he's not. He's not savvy in the world of technology.
So, but also, Peter, I think even if he did, I was just talking to someone the other day about this. I said, there is industries, like taxis, even Uber. Even if you went and bought your brand new Uber car, you financed that. Well, there's no one's going anywhere, you know what I mean? And then also you don't want to even get in an Uber because of ramifications with health and the like. So it's been, and I think it's a great point you made. And that's why I left the question pretty general, because there has been some industries that have just taken off and exploded, and I certainly covered those. Obviously. Well, technology, but also just if you're online in certain homewares and other products, just really took off, or you change around to PPE products, things like that. It did take off. There are other industries, though, that have been decimated, absolutely decimated. And it's not about going online or, as you said, doing the pivot, because I agree with you. Pivoting means you've actually got one foot nailed to the ground and you're rotating. I think you could move and do different things. So I think there has been some industries that have grown, some that have been, I think there's been some great realizations though. I think one of the great things I've seen is people realizing just what sort of job are they in, is there something they want to continue to do? And I think that the great migration to regional Australia, to different places, to working out where you can work, what you can't work, and actually generally what you want to do. And you've probably been aware now they're talking about that, the great resignation, which has sort of come out of the US, but now it's starting to look here. I don't know whether it'll come to fruition or not, although it's starting to. I think as people start to realize, just questioning the why of their life and the roles they want to be in, and do they want to be that partner or be that MD or be that leader who's working 15 hours a day and never seeing their family and that kind of thing. I think that's been probably an upside to it. But I think also in Australia, Peter, what I've certainly found from my experience has been you've got to be careful. Like, you can talk to Victorians in a certain way, but people in Queensland, South Australia, Western Australia just haven't been through. They just haven't been through this at all. And so your attitude and mindset needs to be quite national. And of course, if you go overseas, you've got different countries again who are not going through what we're going through.
Absolutely. And it's so interesting to hear you say that and talk about even within our own country. And that's why the word empathy is really important, because most people genuinely don't have it, because all that matters is what impacts them, and maybe that's human nature. And I think that's why we do bring credibility to the stage at this point in time, by virtue of the fact that we are the most locked down city in the world. And there are things that we aggressively disagree with, and behaviours and lack of, you look at leadership qualities, and I'd love to discuss some of those with you today, as to what people are genuinely looking for, and maybe what they're not getting. But, I think empathy is really, this period of time has taught me, if nothing has taught me that,
yes.
is to walk in somebody else's shoes. I mean, we quoted Muhammad Ali before. So if you want to, go back to boxing parlance, was it Mike Tyson, I think, who said that, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Well, we've been, we've been punched in the mouth. And so now we have to work out the way forward. And to your point, I think that it's been beholden. Certainly, I look at myself and I think, yes, I really need to drill down into what does matter most to me. And my family, I've got this little thing around my wrist at the moment, which was a gift on Father's Day from my little grandchildren, and it says Papa, because that's what they call me on one side, and the other side, it's got 4 initials. It's got the 4 initials of my grandchildren, Harper, Paxton, Brooklyn, and Sage, who I've not yet met. And I look at it every single day, Robin, and it makes me feel so blessed and so grateful for what I have, as opposed to looking at what I don't have or what's been taken away from me.
Peter, I love that. More importantly, Peter, and for ladies and gentlemen, just to give you a bit of context here, Peter Thurin does one trip to Byron Bay, and now he's wearing beads. He's an amazing character. You gotta love it. I tell you what, you changed your image up. You're looking good. I can't wait to see the ink you're going to show me later on. I wish we were doing this more visually, Peter. But no, I 100% in all seriousness agree. We talked about leadership. You started to touch on this before, and there's a report that just came out last week. And again, I haven't really gone to LinkedIn or talk much about it, because it's very new and I'm just digesting it. But one of the things that said in was this: that Australian workers were craving for purposeful, visionary, and engaged leaders, right? And I was amazed that it was so big. It was something like 70% of Australian workers are craving for purposeful, visionary, and engaged leaders. Why do you think? What's happening there, Peter? Any thoughts?
Well, Rob, even if we go back one step, look, you and I know that the world has been turned upside down, and people are still worried, anxious, they're stressed to the max. In some cases, they're genuinely scared. They were worried about their elderly parents, worried about their own jobs, worried about, I look at my daughter, the kids' education, and all the things that have been taken away from them. And I think sometimes, we want leaders who show genuine empathy, who are constantly communicating, with us, during this time, who are completely open and honest, that don't pretend that they know everything, that, as challenging as it can be, to put up their hand and say, you know what, I got this wrong, but I want to make this right for you. And so that's the engaged. When the words that you used just now were purposeful, visionary, and engaged.
Engaged, yeah.
Purposeful, visionary, engaged. As I throw those words around in my head, you got to have all 3 of them, because you might be purposeful and visionary, but totally out of context with what's
Yes.
important to me, totally, but it's purposeful to you and you have
Yeah.
your own vision, but you totally disengage with the real world. It's like we're totally focused on the number of cases, okay, but at such a cost because the mental health and well-being of our community has been smashed. You know, kiddies have to be at school. And what it's doing to families and you know, relationships that are just breaking down. And, you know, more people have committed suicide in our state of Victoria, more young people have committed suicide than older people have died from COVID. It's horrible. So it's all very well to have a vision about purpose. Well, I want to reduce the cases to zero, but they're totally disengaged. And that's not a political statement. That is a fact.
No, I love the engage. And I think of those three words, Peter, engage is the one that really leapt out at me, because if you're not engaged, then you can't deliver your purpose. And no one's going to find you any visionary because you're not engaged. I love the engaged side.
Can you just say that again? Can you just say that again? That is so important. Rob, we've got to be really careful here because we don't want to just throw words out because that's what people, they tick the box. Yeah, I'm purposeful, I'm visionary. Yeah, I'm engaged. I checked in on Bob and Mary just the other day just to see how they were going. Mind you, I wasn't listening, and I have no idea that they've got little children, and I have no idea that there's an elderly mum that can't get back into our home state because we won't allow her to cross the border, and we've lost our humanity. And that's where that engagement would change everything. And if a leader got up and said, you know what, I haven't done this as well as I could. I need to get better. And the things that you and I explore, what do I need to do more? What do I need to do better? What do I need to do differently? Because what's happening now is not working, and I need to engage people. I want to bring them along for the ride. I want that step, and I want people to have that spring in their step and to genuinely work to create an environment that brings the best out in people right across the board.
Peter, I really like the engagement side, and I'll give you a great example. I saw last year was from a guy called Gary Starr at Australia Post, one of the leaders there, and I was doing a podcast with Gary, and I said, "What have you done differently?" And this was about, I think, May, June, something like this. And he said, "Well, what I decided when COVID hit was I said to the LT." To his leadership team, let's connect with our people because they're all working from home. Let's connect. He said, let's connect to layers that we don't normally connect to. So he said, I personally rang like 2 layers lower down, and I would ring them. But he said, well, I realized straight away that I wasn't getting through. And he said they were so, I wouldn't say we're excited, but I say probably amazed that Gary had rung. Hey, it's Gary Starr here. I just want to check in and see how you are. And he said, but I was just getting off the cuff from, good Gary, thanks Gary, work's going well, Gary. And he said, I got off the phone, I'd done my job, I could tick the box that I'd connected, but I knew I hadn't really got through. And so he changed his script. And he changed his script because he said, I just realized they were talking to me because I was Gary, a leader two or three levels up. Yeah. And so he started calling back again and going, hey, it's Gary Starr here. I'm really interested to see, what's it feel like to be you today? Just changing it up. And I just thought it was such a great thing for him to do because he didn't have to do it. To a point, he could have ticked the box and say that was engagement, but he felt generally in his heart, he wasn't truly getting through. And he said when he changed his script, he just had much more meaningful dialogue. And he said dialogue that's continued to this day. He built relationships. And I thought it was great he went 2 levels lower. I thought that was a smart move, A. And then secondly, to realize, hey, I'm not really cracking it here. They're kind of responding to me because of my job title, not to Gary the human.
Rob,
I just thought it was interesting.
So if this period of time has done something, it's brought back that genuineness, even from what you're saying about Gary. What's extraordinary, though, to you and me is it's stuff that we've been talking about for 20 years.
Correct.
Yes. That, for me, I find troubling on the one hand, but maybe I'm excited on the other. I'll give you 2 examples. I mean, I was 20 years ago when I first started doing what I'm doing today, when I sold my pharmacies and I'd started down, the world of speaking, mentoring and coaching. I was working with a company and we came up out of necessity. It was a very dysfunctional group of people. And I sat down with one of their directors and we came up with a thing that we called Project 365. And as the name implies, it was the little things that each of us does every day, and that hopefully after 365 days that we would find some massive change. And when you think about it today, it's everything that we talk about, isn't it? It's those small things that we do consistently every day that leads to massive achievement. But what was happening with Project 365 is an active Project 365 might be me ringing Rob Hartnett to say, Rob, how are you doing? Exactly to what you've just described now. So I tick the box that I've rung Rob Hartnett. And so it wasn't working because people were just going through the motion. They were just ticking the box. And so the name was ultimately changed to Project 365. We included a word that I know you love. It became Project 365 with purpose. Everything that we did needed to have meaning and that genuineness that we talk about. So the other day I was talking to a young gentleman who works for a tech company. And how about this? They've come to the realization that what actually matters when they say that the customers are really everything. No. Blow me over with a feather. What they actually have come to the realization is that the people internally matter. And I'm thinking, it was like they had discovered something revolutionary. And I thought, part of me couldn't believe what I was hearing. It's what we've been doing. But maybe that's where it's come to. Maybe people have been, that massive, financial growth, and they've been making so much money, and then all of a sudden the snap of a finger and it's taken away, and they've had to bring it back to being empathetic, to being genuine, to showing how much they really do care about people. I picked up a speaking engagement in the early stages of this challenging time we're going through now, and I chatted to the CEO of a business, and he said to me, Pete, you know what? I have a very strong feeling that we will be judged by how we spend this time. And when I spoke to him a little bit later on, he said, Pete, to your point about Gary and the phone calls that he made, the same person, okay, he too was the CEO of a business, said, Pete, I've now made more phone calls in the last 8 to 9 weeks than I had made in the previous 4 years.
Yeah. I think that's true. I think also in the way we've done it too, we've, used to the technology like we're doing today with Zoom or Teams or WebEx and the like, of finding leaders that are connecting in with their people. One leader told me that he used to connect to Western Australia. He's from Melbourne, but he used to connect to Western Australia. But he said, I do that maybe 4 times a year. I go and see the team.
Yeah.
He said, I speak to that team 4 times a week.
Yeah.
Right. And he said, now, could I have done that before? He said, yeah, I could have done that before. He said, the technology was there. It wasn't quite as good as it is now, but he said it was there. But he said it was almost this, that was like, well, they're over there. So I don't have a problem with getting on the Qantas bus to go to Melbourne and Sydney. But in Perth, I went to 4 times a year, and that was my, my engagement. He said, well, I'm so connected to that group and that group of people. And they feel connected and engaged.
Yeah, look, I there's a leader who cares. I've got a session tonight with out of the United Kingdom. This is a lady who, she works in the world of cybersecurity, another industry that's gone through the ceiling through this period of time. But she's genuinely concerned. So she looks after Europe, Middle East, Asia Pacific, and her greatest cause of concern is eastern seaboard of Australia.
Right.
So she's genuinely worried about her friends and the people on her team that come out of Melbourne, Sydney, and Brisbane, but in particular Melbourne. And I love it. There she is. She's based in the United Kingdom. They've got on with life as usual, pretty much.
Right. Yes.
And yet she really looks around. It's that, as a parent, what were we told? We're told you're only as happy as your unhappiest child. And I think that she's very much adopted that mantra, that she's got some parts in the world, some parts of her team that are flying, but there are others who are really, really hurting. And she wants to show that she genuinely cares. And I'm very blessed to be a part of this session tonight, that she enjoyed something that we had done together, and now she wants to share that with her team. I think what a beautiful character quality, I think.
I think also we talk about what can leaders do in this space, and you said it a little bit earlier when you just said, look, it's about the leader just being vulnerable and making the calls and just saying, hey, look, I haven't got it sorted. This is where I think it's going. But I haven't got all the answers. You don't need to have all the answers. And I think we saw a lot of leaders, and unfortunately we're still seeing it, Peter, even after this 18 months time or something. It's amazing. I'm still finding leaders who are not visible. Who are not visible, and I heard of a very large global organisation, very successful, almost a household name, And a colleague of mine went there excited about going there. Been aspirational for her to go there. And she's got there.
Yes.
She's been there a week, they're a week and a half, and had heard from her leader once. And that's just not good enough.
No,
It's and what's the culture in there that says that's okay? And she rang me and said, "Oh, my leader wants to postpone our second session for another 3 days." And I said, "Push back." I said, "You're working from home. You're in this great business. You've had one connection with your leader, and your leader wants to postpone the second one 3 days." I said, "No, I'm sorry. That's just, you got to push back and say, I'm sorry. I need some guidance here. I don't need that. I don't need them, to answer all my questions. But I've got some questions here. And as a leader, you've got to tap in. I need 15 minutes, 10 minutes. It's not about sit down for 2 hours. But some leaders believe they've got to have all the answers. They need to set aside 2 hours for a session or with their team. It's just not necessary, is it?"
Absolutely not. It's interesting, when I hear a lot of these stories, I know as a young pharmacist, when I wasn't even a qualified pharmacist. I'm talking many, many years ago. I worked for a gentleman who had multiple stores, and back then it was a big deal. So I got to work around all those pharmacies as as a young pharmacy student. But one of his pharmacies, and I'm not making up this number, in the 11 months that I was involved with that business, he turned over 23 members of staff. This is one retail store turned over 23 members of staff in 11 months. That's every 2 weeks, pretty much, that revolving door, people coming and people going. And he taught me an enormous amount about how not to treat people. So a lot of the learnings, we look at what we love, and aspirationally, you talk about this lady who wanted to go somewhere. Maybe she'd seen something that she loved, and that's where she wanted to be. So we look at what we love about leaders, we look at what we love about behaviors, but also we look at what we don't like, and both from leadership qualities and behaviors. And then it becomes beholden upon us to make sure that we bring to life those things that bring the best out in us and bring out the best in the teams of people around us. And I think that today we look at a lot of those qualities like you're describing right now. So I've got to look at that. And as a leader myself, I'm going to look at that and say, well, that doesn't sit well with me. And therefore I must make sure, it's all very well, I can point fingers at others, look at him, look at her, they're not doing it. No. What do I need to do more? What do I need to do better? What do I need to do different? And that's the whole, back to the definition of optimism. To make it so, I have to take responsibility. So we learn we can learn from negative and from positive, but we've got to make sure that we implement that which we want to see in others.
Yeah, 100% agree. Hey, you're doing a lot more coaching today, Peter. What do people come to you for specifically, you think, in your coaching? What are they looking for from you to do for them?
Wow, I love the question, because I actually I can give you a hot off the press example of what they're looking for. So on the weekend, I spoke to a young gentleman who is launching into his first ever business and came to me for guidance, counsel, mentoring, coaching. And I said to him, I asked him pretty much what you're asking me right now. I said, how can I be of most value to you? I actually wanted to hear it from him before I dumped on him what it is that I think I bring to the table. So this young gentleman, as I was saying, who's just launched into his first business, the two words he threw at me were hope and inspiration. I'm thinking, wow, give me hope that I can be successful and be there as a source of inspiration. Rob, it was as if I could have set it up myself. When I look at what I would love to get from leadership, if somebody was going shoulder to shoulder with me as a mentor, I want them to give me hope that I can be successful, but to be there as a source of inspiration. And I don't mean rah-rah nonsense. I'm talking about
not cheerleading.
No. And I think, and that's a really good point that you make. No, not cheerleading, because I think what people don't want today is that rah-rah. They want tangible steps that, this is about creating motion, but it needs to be something that they can take and implement, and steps that are going to push them in the direction of that which they say that they want to achieve. So when we sat down together and had a look at his vision for where he would love to be and what he would love to do, my initial role with him, I bring to the table, obviously years experience owning and operating businesses, But for me right now, he wants me to give him that hope that he can be successful, that he's not just engaged, in la la land, and be there as a constant source of inspiration. By that also to challenge him, listen to him, be supportive, to encourage him, but also too that he's focused on continual improvement, a better version of himself today than he was yesterday, and that everything that he does, there's that whole focus on being a little bit better at every increment. So, and that's hot off the press. Now, there's a young gentleman talking about coaching and mentoring, but I think too that they want to know that you genuinely care about them. You have a vested interest in their success. It isn't just about you. I had a big conversation with a company who I am involved now in a coaching and mentoring space, and they were over, Rob, previous mentors in inverted commas, getting sales 101 off the shelf. That they were just getting modules or downloading stuff from computers. And you've heard me say many times before that I will never dazzle you with paperwork. And I think probably right now that serves in my favor, that people want you. They want you. They want Rob Hartnett. They want Peter Thurin. They don't want somebody that looks like you, sounds like you. They actually want you to go shoulder to shoulder with them. As I said before, people are worried, anxious, they're a little bit concerned about the way forward. And sometimes your ability to help them at the moment, it might be around people stuff. But with this young gentleman, he's got a business on his own. So for him, it really is around just keeping him focused on what matters most to him. Because if everything's important, nothing's important. We don't have the time to focus on the next shiny gold object. So we're very clear. We have great clarity now as to what matters most and where he wants to be. And part of my role there is to hold him to account. But as I say, hope and inspiration were the two words he threw at me. So there you go. That's not me making it up. That's coming exactly from the source.
Hey, your catchphrase, easy to do, easy not to do, your choice, which I love around this. And clearly that young gentleman's done that. He's made a choice, and he's actually easy to call Peter Thurin, easy not to call Peter Thurin. It's your choice. Where did the inspiration for that come from, Peter? Why was that so important you decided to actually trademark it and own it?
Look, I'm probably not the first person to say it, Rob. It's life's interesting, isn't it? We no one's reinventing the wheel, but it certainly is something that always came out of my mouth. And I know that in speaking engagements all around the world, is that what was coming back to me was that's what seemed to resonate so strongly with people. And when I looked at my own life, what changed there were two things that changed my personal and professional life. I know that you and I have spoken about it before, but they were coaching junior Australian rules football. My oldest boy, when he was 6, 7, 8, 9 years of age, I got very, very involved in coaching junior football. And when I was 36 years of age, I started martial arts. But keep in mind, it was a dream I'd had since I was 8 years of age. So the epiphany was the phone call, a simple phone call that changed my life, a phone call that was so easy to make and so easy not to. And from the age of 8 to the age of 36, I'd allowed awkward and uncomfortable stop me from having the courage to make the phone call. It was that simple phone call. I'm not, now please don't misunderstand easy to do, easy not to do. I'm not suggesting for a moment that to achieve a black belt in martial arts is easy to do, but to make a phone call to book your first lesson is. I'm not saying that if you have no sports since leaving school, that to be fit and healthy is easy to do, but to set the alarm 10 minutes earlier to get up to go for a walk around the park is easy to do. It's easy not to do. I'm not suggesting to speak fluent Italian is easy to do, but 3 words a day, one in the morning, one at lunch, and one in the evening is easy to do. It's easy not to do. And you have the power of choice. And what's kind of funny is that, as you know, I wrote a book called Be the Best You Can Be, probably back in 2006. But I had so many people say to me, where's the easy to do, easy not to do book? And Rob, I'd caught myself out. I was in breach of what I talk about. You and I talk about growth mindset and fixed mindset. I'd adopted a fixed mindset and chosen not to write the book until I just ran out of excuses. And I found the way forward was, well, how do I bring this to life? I did it as a collaboration, which is a word that you threw around a little bit before. And today I have a book called, The A to Z of Easy to Do, Easy Not to Do. Writing a book was not easy for me. Okay, really. But to make a phone call to a gentleman who I really enjoyed working with, he's one of the guys that helped me with my rebranding, and we sat down together. In days gone by, I would never have asked for help. And that is something that I've learned, that it's okay. And even if you had said no to me, I was no worse off.
Right. But you still made that, what I call, you made the first possible step to your impossible.
Yeah. The first.
What's your first possible step to your impossible, which is that 10 minutes early, that's make that phone call, that's whatever happens to be, not taking away from the task. Now, Peter, I have to say, though, I'm very disappointed in you, because I actually think I was the inspiration for the A to Z book. I think I was the inspiration, because I think when you saw the fact that I could actually write a book, you thought, this is ridiculous. If this numbskull can do it, I can do it. Well, that's true, isn't it? I did inspire you, Peter. Please.
This is your podcast, so I was actually going to say that. But yes, no, absolutely spot on. But I am going to quote. I've got it sitting in front of me, so I have to share it, because I know he's a mentor of yours, and you actually. I'd always liked John Maxwell, but I know that he plays an enormous part in your life, and you and his as well. Which is, I think that you sometimes sell yourself a little bit short there. And one of his quotes that I love around possibility is, if you embrace possibility thinking, your dreams will go from molehill to mountain size. And because you believe in possibilities, you put yourself in position to achieve them. And look, I know we've got to be a bit careful sometimes that, all these positive affirmations and rah, rah, rah. Okay. It's like, it doesn't matter how many times I say, I will win Wimbledon this year. I will win Wimbledon this year. The reality is that ain't going to happen. But it doesn't mean that I can't be the best tennis player that I can possibly be. And for me, writing a book was always going to be challenging. And so I wrote the A to Z of easy to do. And then I got asked, well, Pete, why did you write it in the form of an A to Z? And the obvious answer, of course, was because it was easy to do. And, and we brought it to life. And I had a lot of fun doing it. So there you go. It's amazing what comes up. And I'm going to share this with you, because the thing that I get asked all the time is, well, you wrote an A to Z. What's the X for?
Because what is the X for?
What is the X for? Well, you'll tell in one moment that it was done as a collaboration, because I wouldn't have been smart enough. So the gentleman, Brett Rutledge, who I collaborated with, it was his word. And then we had a lot of fun writing a blurb around it. The word is Zumpen. And I would love your podcast community, your wider community, because I know you go global, to have a look at the word Zumpen, Xoompin, because each of us has to keep Zumpening. And what Zumpening is just driving over the bumps in the road. And one thing for certain in this world that we live in right now is that there are plenty of bumps in the road, and we've got to keep Zumpening. So if ever there was a great new word for your community,
it is. It's a good one. I love new words, Peter. You know that. I'm a big fan. I
noticed your smile. I know the people listening to us today can't see the visual, but I'm loving the big smile on your face.
Gee, I thought you were going to add Xanadu in there for a while, Peter. One of your favourite movies, but I like Zumpen. Hey, which is a nice one for me too, because a recent podcast I just did with my good friend Darren Finkelstein. Yes. Darren and I were at Apple together, and Darren's now an accountability coach. And one of the interesting things that Darren said to me was, he said that most people aren't accountable. And he's actually done some pretty good research on this, and based some other research previous to him. And he said, generally, most people aren't accountable. Like he said, they think of things, they have dreams, they've got ideas, they've got aspirations. But he said that most people aren't accountable. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree. Next.
Yeah, there you go. So it's classic. They aren't well, why aren't people accountable? What do you think stops them doing that, from being accountable?
Firstly, I agree people are not. And it's funny, because three things that I focus on post-speaking engagements, when we come off stage, is one, how do you maintain the momentum from what we've just done on stage? And normally there's a lot of energy and hype, but hopefully some strong messages. So how do we maintain that momentum? How do we keep people focused? But how do we hold them to account? How do we hold each other accountable? Because that's where the discipline comes in, isn't it? Yeah. The whole thing around accountability. And sometimes there's got to be something or someone that holds you to account. Well, one of the things that I've done, and I'm coming back to that. So I love the fact, that you're asking the question, but Darren, yourself, and me too. We're all aggressively agreeing with each other on this lack of accountability, because I have a new program called Get in the Game, and the first part. So there are 3 steps to it. There's make a start, make it easy, and make it happen. And the first part of the program around making a start is creating an accountability circle.
Mm.
Okay, to whatever you can to hold yourself to account. By telling people, don't hide.
Right.
And sometimes we need, you and I, after we go back, as you said earlier, to April 2020. And what's pretty cool is that you and I had never met when we were involved in a project together.
Yes.
And
Yes.
knowing that we were having to meet at certain times was holding me to account. So I was awkward and uncomfortable at that time because I was involved in a space that was much more comfortable to you, and in the tech world, where I think hope bring value to the table is through the people stuff. But having you there held me to account. It meant that it was not negotiable. I had to have my homework done. If we were meeting at 3:00 on a Wednesday afternoon, then I had to be ready pre-3:00 that Wednesday afternoon. And having you on my team was a massive enforcer of Peter Thurin being held to account. And you've got to find a way to do that. And I think that by sharing your dreams and goals and aspirations, and going shoulder to shoulder with somebody is a great way of doing just that. But the other part to it, or lack of accountability, sometimes is one of the things that you and I have spoken about previously, is that people are often interested in certain things, but there's not that true commitment to it. I find that it's much easier to hold myself to account when I have real purpose in what I'm doing, when I'm doing what gives me my greatest joy. And for me, it's, that word discipline really steps in. And what is it? Was it Jim Rohn who said that discipline is the bridge between setting that goal and achieving the goal? And the whole thing around accountability is discipline, finding a way that works for you, knowing what your why you want to do something. I worked with a gentleman who has 3 kiddies under the age of 4, and he never held himself to account from a health perspective, and he couldn't lift up his kids.
Right.
3 kids under the age of 4, and could not lift his children because he had a sore back. He had a sore back because he had a big tummy. He had a big tummy because he loved his food and he loved his alcohol. And the whole accountability only stepped in when we could paint a sufficient picture around the quality time that he spent with his kids. So you've got to find a way that works with you. I'm really pleased to report back that he's made the decision, that the desire was now strong enough, and the discipline. What are the 3 Ds that Rob Hartner talks about in his book? I think they were desire, discipline, and determination.
Yeah.
Weren't they? I think the 3 Ds hold so strongly with holding yourself to account. Would that be a fair thing to say?
Yeah, I think I like it, because I've always, also talk about with successful big, projects is always around leadership, accountability, and discipline. And I think the discipline is the one that is how the accountability happens. It's a little bit. It's a bit they say you can be accountable. How do you do that? Well, on an ongoing basis, it's the discipline. It's that regular routine. It's those rituals. It's those things you go and do, and that holds people. That allows the accountability to happen. But but first of all, you got to be inspired by it. Got to want to do it. And so the leadership, whether it's self-leadership or a leader taking you on a journey, needs to be there from the start. Otherwise, it's not sustainable.
Yeah, and so it comes back again to a little bit what we spoke about before. If everything's important, then nothing's important. So be really, really mindful that you need to focus on what matters most to you and to bring those to life. And I read recently, we talk about the difference between being interested and being committed. And I love what somebody said. So I wish I knew who to give the credit to. It's that it's easier to be 100% committed than it is to be 98% committed. And I aggressively agree with that, because 98% commitment means, well, maybe today I just don't feel like doing it. I'm not going to hold myself to account today. I'm not going to do my 2 sit-ups and my 2 push-ups. I'm not going to ring my mum and tell her that I love her. When you're 100% committed, there's no grey. You're all in. Yeah. You're all in. So all those little acts of discipline and the rituals that you talk about, not negotiable. They will be done. There's a yes box and a no box. I only get to tick one, and I'm ticking the yes box.
I think the other thing there, Peter, on the accountability side, and Darren talks about this as well, as you've raised a really good one, is just about that committing to others, what you're doing. I think one of the stats that really I love brings this to life a lot is if I mention the word, the date to you, January 18th, does that mean anything to you? January 18?
I have a feeling that it should.
It should, but it probably doesn't mean anything. One, it should because it's my birthday, but that's a whole different conversation. But January 18
Mine was yesterday.
I know it's in the mail. January 18 is actually known by the guys who have Strava. I don't know if you've seen Strava, which is the app that records for running and athletics and swimming and cycling and all that sort of stuff. January 18, Strava, with all their global data, have labelled Quitters Day. right? So January 18 is Quitters Day.
Uh-huh.
And what it is, it's the people who make New Year's resolutions, and they see the spike in the data. So it's actually fact. They see all these spikes in the data after New Year's Day. People go, I'm going to get fitter, I'm going to get stronger, I'm going to win this tournament, I do this time trial, I'm going to win Wimbledon, whatever it is. And they see this massive spike, right? From January 1 to about January 17 and January 18, it's just like, it just falls off the cliff where people go, too hard, not accountable. But what is really interesting in their data is that about 5 days later, those people who are training with team members are back on the horse.
Isn't that interesting?
And the others who are training alone don't come back. And it's a fascinating bit of data that you may want to even explore some more of. But let's see, 18 is Quitters Day, but 5 days later, it's like you can see that they've come back on. The ones who've gone, hey, didn't see you for the ride this morning, Peter. Noticed you went out there for your walk or your run, or I didn't see you down at the tennis court, or I didn't see you at the pool. And the team members keep the others accountable. And, oh, yeah, I got a bit, and they get them back on. 5 days later, they're back on the track again. On your own, they said it just fades off.
So, Rob, it's interesting. So go back to one of the questions that you asked earlier on about, what is working right now. I think one of the things that people have really made an effort to do is like to use the technology to do their steps and to check in with each other. Have you done your steps today?
Yes.
And I think that really is such an interesting thing. I know my accountant shared that with me. He's now got a group of people who he's now met through this period of time, and they've become new friends.
Yep.
And they hold each other to account to make sure that they've actually done the exercise that they said that they were going to do. So
isn't it fascinating?
It's great, isn't it? And it's that old, if you remember years and years ago, you and I used to speak about, we used to talk about winners and losers only in terms of attitude, a winning attitude versus a losing attitude. And one of the great things about a winning attitude was a winner finds a way, a loser finds an excuse. So a winner will find a way to bring it to life, whether it's own personal discipline, determination, or whether tapping into somebody else and going shoulder to shoulder with somebody else, because that's what works for me. So I just come back to something else that I think is really, really important with that, is that we then need to have a vested interest in each other's success. Because if I'm just taking from you but not giving back, this needs to work so that we are I'm taking as much care about you as I know that you are in me.
Yeah, I love that. Hey, Peter, if you and I got in a time machine and we went back and caught up with 15-year-old Peter Thurin, what were some words of wisdom you'd have for young Peter today?
15-year-old Peter Thurin was only interested in two things, Rob Hartnett.
It's a family show, Peter, by the way.
I understand that, so I'm going to sort of bring this down a little bit. But the only two things that mattered in my life at the age of 15 were girls and sport, and probably in that order. You need to understand that, like your good self, I went to an all-boys school. So when I was let off the chain and girls came into my life, so I'm not sure that 15-year-old Peter Thurin would have listened a great deal to what this Peter Thurin has to say. But if I was speaking to a younger Peter Thurin, so that, a teenage Peter Thurin, I think one of the great things that I wish I had and even today, Rob, I'm such a work in progress here, is that it's okay to ask for help, that you don't have all the answers. Putting your hand up in a classroom at school, I didn't want to be wrong. So maybe I didn't put my hand up in the classroom. And there so the outside world thought I was this confident kid because I was good at sport. And as I said, I'm not sure how good I was with the girls, but I certainly didn't lack in enthusiasm. And you know what I'm saying? So people's perception might have been one thing, but I wish I had been better at asking for help, that it's okay to fail as long as you fail forward.
Yes.
It's okay to look silly because that's how you learn and grow. And Rob, I'm still learning that. I still, because of the roles that you and I play now about being a source of inspiration to others as a coach and as a mentor, I don't want to fall over and look silly. I hope I'm getting better at it, but I'm very much a work in progress still. That just maybe I would have been able to fast track my speaking business or my coaching and mentoring business in the early days had I been more prepared to put up my hand and say, would you come on board and help me? And that's why I'm so proud of the book, The A to Z of Easy to Do, because it was a collaboration. And I'm proud to tell you it was a collaboration.
Yes, I love
what
that.
it meant was I asked for help.
Yes, yeah.
If you don't step forward, you're always in the same place, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Peter, it's been fantastic to catch up again. Really enjoyed our second chat. How can people find out more about Peter Thurin? Where should they go?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Look, really, peterthurin.com, the website. You can direct message me. LinkedIn, I put out everyday inspiration weekly videos every week. So if your community would love to tap into them and like them to appear every day once a week into their inbox, just send me your email address or through Rob Hartnett. As you know, my whole philosophy in life is that everything is a choice between easy to do and easy not to do. Choosing easy to do means focusing on what you can do rather than on what you can't do. And, I bring that to life both personally and in teams, professionally. And I feel so blessed. I love the fact you've asked me that. So peterthurin.com, direct message me, call me. There's nothing precious about me, whatsoever. I'd love to talk to people. And if I can impact as a coach, as a mentor, as a speaker, I would love to. But mate, I also want to just say before you ask a question, I feel incredibly privileged to have been invited back, by yourself, to be a part of this. I love our conversations. You mentioned Finn before, the fact that I get to meet your family through this, and Finn's been in my office. And I know he still drinks out of the easy to do mug.
He certainly does.
But I love it. I feel it's very humbling and it's very flattering. I do love it. Take nothing for granted.
Yeah, Peter, fantastic. Good to see you again. And let's lock it in for another session in the future. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoyed this episode of the It's All Possible podcast. Please subscribe and rate the podcast you listen to so we can continue to serve you and inspire others. Remember, connect to us on all the social media channels. The It's All Possible podcast is hosted by me, Rob Hartnett, and produced by the phenomena that is Finn Hartnett. Connect with us via LinkedIn, Instagram, or the link tree in the show notes.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.